Hi, I'm Barbara Seelig Brown. Welcome to Stress-Free Cooking. What I want you to do is put on your bunny slippers, pour a glass of wine, and cook a great meal with me. Welcome to my kitchen. What I'm going to do now is make something really unusual but really fun using ingredients from the Tuscan table. So I'm going to take some Tuscan prosciutto. Tuscan prosciutto differs from traditional prosciutto di San Daniele or prosciutto di Parma because it has the addition of black pepper and juniper berries when it's cured. So we're going to take a few slices of Tuscan prosciutto, and I'm going to lay them on a piece of parchment paper to make a rectangle. And the parchment paper is going to serve as a sushi mat, and we're going to think of this as an Italian prosciutto sushi. So I have my prosciutto, and then I have some cooked rice, and this rice is just cooked very simply, just in water, and we spread about maybe a ½ inch of rice over the sushi. And I cooked this rice yesterday, so it's nice and cold, but if you're cooking your rice just before using it, you'd want to let it cool off because it will melt the prosciutto. Okay, so we'll spread our rice out. And then once the rice is spread nice and evenly, I am going to take some cucumber slices and lay them across my sushi. And I'm going to take some pecorino toscano and put it on my sushi. And then the other thing you could do is you could take some wonderful Tuscan honey from Lunigiana and drizzle it over your cucumber and your pecorino. And we're just going to start to roll this with our parchment paper as if it were our sushi mat. Okay, and then once you have it rolled, what you'd want to do is chill this so that it keeps the shape, and I'll wrap it back up in my parchment paper to chill it. We'll put it in our refrigerator for a few minutes, 10, 20 minutes to firm it up. And then what we'll do is we'll take a knife, a serrated knife, and we'll just give it a little cut and place it on our serving dish without the parchment paper. But since we haven't had time to chill this, I'm going to leave the parchment paper on this one. And I'll unwrap this the other side. And there we have our prosciutto sushi. Hi, I'm Barbara Seelig-Brown. Welcome to Stress-Free Cooking. I just returned from Tuscany, had a fabulous time. So today's show is going to be dedicated to the Tuscan table. And the Tuscan table consists of prosciutto di Toscana, pecorino di Toscana, extra virgin olive oil from Tuscany, and honey from a town in Tuscany called Lunigiana. These products are wonderful. So our recipes today will include these products. We're going to have a great time and everything's going to taste delicious. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to make is a cheese souffle. Really quick, really easy. We're going to use pecorino di Toscana. So we have all of our ingredients here. I have some milk. I have some whole eggs. I have cream cheese. This is light cream cheese, also known as Neufchâtel. And I have some salt and pepper already blended and some grated pecorino di Toscana. We're going to put this all into our blender. First, I'll put the cream cheese. And then the eggs. 1, 2, 3 eggs. 5 ounces of cream cheese. A 1/4 cup of milk, skim milk, whole milk, whatever you like to use. So now let's blend this up before we add the cheese. Make sure the blender goes together. So we blended that nice and smoothly, and then I poured it into something that has a great pouring spout. So when I fill my muffin cup or my souffle dish or whatever I'm using, it makes it a lot easier. So now we have our great souffle mixture. Fill these almost to the top. And this is a non-stick muffin pan. You can also use ramekins. You can use a big souffle dish. But for what I'm doing today, I want individual sizes. So a muffin pan or a cupcake pan works perfectly. Okay, so we're almost done. This is going to go into a 375-degree oven for about 20 minutes. If I were doing a full-size souffle, it would take about 40. All right, so pop this into the oven, bake it for about 20 minutes, and we're going to go on to the next recipe, which is a wild boar ragu. Dish number 2 is going to be a wild boar ragu with a pappardelle pasta. It's very classic in Tuscany. It's very classic throughout the whole country, but particularly in Tuscany, wild boar roam free. If you've never had wild boar, it's a great taste. It's somewhere between pork and beef. It's very rich, but it actually is more in the pork family. They're huge. And one of my friends who was on the trip with me just loved hugging the statues of wild boar. But anyway, it was lots of fun. So let's get started. First, we'll start with some Tuscan extra virgin olive oil. Just coat the bottom of the pan. And then to this, I'm going to add about 2 cloves of minced garlic. Okay. And we'll cook that for just a minute, just until it starts to become fragrant. Because we don't want to overcook garlic. If garlic gets really dark brown or black, it can make your entire dish taste bitter. So just until it becomes fragrant, which is, sometimes 45 seconds to a minute. Okay. Add some chopped onion. This was 1 medium onion chopped. Okay. And we're going to cook this just for a few minutes, just to start to soften this. And then we'll be adding some ground wild boar. And wild boar is not in every supermarket, but you can look online, you'll find wild boar. Sometimes you'll find a grocery store that's very high-end and they'll have some game meats. If you don't find wild boar, another way to make this recipe is to use buffalo, ground buffalo. Bison has no saturated fat. It's a great substitute for ground beef, and it has a really delicious and rich flavor. So let's add the ground boar. And as this cooks, we can break it up a little bit. So we're going to brown this nicely. And to this, we'll add some finely chopped or crushed tomatoes. I like to use imported tomatoes from Italy. They really do have a very, very full flavor. And when you're cooking and you're trying to replicate quality recipes that you've had in other restaurants, one of the best things you can do is use quality ingredients. So make sure when you're purchasing your ingredients, you get the best quality that you can afford, which also applies to olive oil. Olive oil varies in price. You see all different price ranges, but one of my friends who actually imports olive oil from all over the country of Italy always encourages her customers to buy the best quality they can afford. So it might not mean that you're going to buy the most expensive one on the shelf, but you buy what you're comfortable with. Okay, so let's check this, starting to brown nicely. Okay, and once this is really nicely browned and gets that great caramelization on it, then we know our flavor is going to be really delicious and really rich. Sometimes we undercook things and then we don't get those really great full flavors. So make sure you brown this well. Cook that onion. Okay. You can add a little bit of salt. So I always have my salt in a little bowl on the side of my stove so that I can pinch. A pinch is about 1/8 of a teaspoon. It's an easy way to measure salt and not over salt your dishes. So this is just going to take a couple of minutes to cook. We'll break it up while it's cooking. You could also make the same exact dish with any meat, any ground meat that you like, ground chicken, ground turkey. It would work, but the wild boar or the buffalo will give it a really special flavor. Our meat is nicely browned. We've already added some salt to this, so let's add some freshly ground black pepper. And the wild boar is a very full flavor, so we don't really want to add too many ingredients to this because we don't want to drown that great flavor. All right, let's stir this up. Now we're going to add the tomatoes. So one of the tricks for adding liquid to a pan is to pour it over something to break its fall. So pour it over the back of the spoon so it doesn't splash all over your kitchen. Okay. And we'll mix this well. We will bring it to a boil, but then we're going to turn it down to a little lower, a much lower boil. Okay. And this will cook for a few minutes while our wild boar ragu simmers. Let's talk about cooking pasta. So you want to start with at least a 5 or 6 quart pot. You bring the water to a rolling boil, and then you add about a tablespoon of salt. Don't add the salt until the water boils, because if you put the salt in before the water boils, you can actually discolor or pit your pot. So the salt will reduce the boiling temperature, so it's not going to stop the boiling. Rolling boil, lots of salt. And then we're going to add our pappardelle. Pappardelle is just a wide ribbon pasta. These are little nests. It's just the way they're packaged. And this is a high quality pasta. You want pasta that's made with bronze dyes. It's going to have a better texture. And what happens if you buy high quality pasta with good texture, your sauce is actually going to cling to the pasta a lot better, and you're going to get more mouthfeel and more chew. I always put the lid back on the pasta pot to bring it back to the boil as fast as possible. That keeps the pasta from sticking to the bottom of the pot. And while the pasta is cooking, I'm going to add fresh basil to my sauce. So we're tearing the basil because, let's separate this a little bit. We're tearing the basil because basil blackens very quickly. It oxidizes if you don't use a really sharp knife, but also tearing it is going to help alleviate a lot of that oxidation. So just tear a few leaves of basil. And I like to keep it large so that we know it's in there. It looks beautiful. Adding fresh herbs towards the end of the cooking time will give you more of a fresh flavor. You can add them in the beginning, but you won't have quite as much of the fresh flavor that you get. All right, take the lid off now that that's boiling. And a couple more leaves of fresh basil. Okay, and we'll stir this in. And this pasta won't take all that long to cook. We want our pasta al dente, which means to the tooth. Most restaurants in this country seem to overcook pasta, I had a friend call me once and tell me she had just been to a brand new Italian restaurant. She said the food was excellent, Barb, but it was the oddest thing. The pasta was undercooked. So after a little bit of discussion, I realized the pasta was probably perfectly cooked, but she thought it was undercooked because most pasta that she's had was perhaps overcooked. So al dente, look at the package. Depending on the shape of the pasta, it's going to take a different amount of time, but the pappardelle is probably going to take about 7 or 8 minutes. Okay. And we will be garnishing this with pecorino di Toscana because the flavor of the pecorino and the boar will be wonderful together. And also, they're both very local ingredients. And when you're cooking, if you think in terms of local ingredients, you can't go wrong. The terroir comes into play. The flavors of the ingredients complement one another because they're from the same region. And the same holds true for wine. If you're trying to pair wine with a dish, pick a wine from the same region. So a Tuscan wine. Tuscany is famous for Chianti Classico, which is made from the Sangiovese grape. So if you can't get a Chianti from Tuscany, as long as you get a Sangiovese wine, it would complement this dish really well. All right, so let's check the pasta. Okay, and the nests have unfolded and the pasta looks beautiful. It just needs another minute or two. Okay. Yeah, just another minute or two. And we'll be ready to plate this dish. Now, when you're garnishing dishes, you want to garnish with an ingredient that's in the dish. So for this dish, a perfect garnish is going to be a couple of leaves of fresh basil. Our pasta's done, but before I drain the pasta, I'm going to take a little bit of the pasta cooking water and I'm going to add it to my ragu, because what this does is it tightens up the sauce and it adds a little flavor from the pasta, and some of that starchiness from the pasta really brings a nice element to the sauce. So let's drain the pasta. Let's grab 2 of these. All right. Let's drain the pasta. And what I'm going to do while that pasta's draining is I'm going to take some of my sauce and put it into a pan, because this is a lot more sauce than I need for that one package of pasta. So we'll put the sauce into another pan. All right, so let's go grab some pasta. Okay, so we have some pasta and sauce. Toss it well. And we don't need our pasta swimming in the sauce. Okay, so that looks perfect. And let's plate this. Okay, that's a nice healthy serving. Since sometimes in this country we eat pasta as an entree, I think that would be more of an entree serving size. Okay, a little bit of extra sauce on top. And a garnish of fresh basil. A couple of nice leaves. So now we'll also garnish this with some of our grated pecorino di Toscana, which has a wonderful sharp flavor. And you can get aged or fresh pecorino, but for this dish, I'm using the aged pecorino di Toscana. So what we've done is we've started with 2 cloves of garlic in our Tuscan extra virgin olive oil, 1 medium onion chopped, cooked those slightly, and then we added 1 pound of ground wild boar, browned it, and you want to make sure that you get a really good brown on that because you'll get better flavor that way. And then we added our nice strained tomatoes or crushed tomatoes, whatever your favorite type are, but I want you to use the imported tomatoes because they really do add a great flavor to this. A little salt and pepper, and then we cook it a few minutes, and before we finished, we added some freshly torn basil, cooked our pasta to the al dente stage, put some of the pasta cooking liquid into the sauce, and then we brought it all together by putting the pasta into the sauce, tossing it, and then we were ready to plate. Buon appetito. So, one other thing that the Tuscan table can offer to us is a great either quick dessert or an appetizer cheese plate. But in Europe, cheese is customarily served as a dessert. So let's make a cheese plate with our pecorino di Toscana. And we're going to use our honey from Lunigiana. Okay. So we'll have a nice piece of pecorino di Toscana. Oops. Okay. And I have some almonds here. I'm going to break these up a little bit. Okay. And almonds will give us a nice crunch to this cheese plate. And then we have an apple, so a nice crunchy apple. So we're going to have the creamy texture from the cheese. And here in this cheese plate, what we're really doing is mixing a lot of textures, which is always a great way to make any dish or plan any plate. Different textures, different colors, and different flavors make for very interesting dishes. So we're not peeling the apple because the apple's skin is going to give us lots of texture and lots of fiber. Okay, so a few slices of apple, any kind of apple that you like. And then all we need to do is take some of the honey and drizzle it over the top. Now we have two kinds of honey. One is a clover honey, which is very light in color, and one is a chestnut honey, which is very dark. And also the flavors are going to vary just as the colors did. So first we have a very light, sweet, mild honey. And then I'm going to add to this a drizzle of the chestnut honey. And this is just such a beautiful color, such a gorgeous amber color. So from way up high, we'll drizzle this over our cheese plate. And this would be the best dessert, in my opinion, because I like desserts that are a little bit more savory than sweet. Okay, so we have incorporated pecorino di Toscana, walnuts, and Italy does grow a lot of walnuts, so we're keeping everything very local. We have a beautiful, crisp, crunchy apple, and then our two different honeys, the lighter, milder, sweeter honey, and then we have the chestnut honey. So I encourage you to stock your pantry with ingredients from the Tuscan table. Prosciutto di Toscana, which has a little bit more seasoning in it than our traditional prosciutto di San Daniele or prosciutto di Parma. We also have aged or fresh pecorino di Toscano available to us, our two wonderful honeys, and then extra virgin olive oil from Tuscany. And one note about extra virgin olive oil from Tuscany, it does have a very low acidity content or acidity level. We don't even think of olive oils as having acidity in them, but the acidity does come from the way the olives are grown. It happens out in the field. A Tuscan extra virgin olive oil has less than 0.5 acidity, and general olive oils have 0.8%. So it is a little bit lower in acidity, gives it a spicier flavor. I'm Barbara Seelig Brown. Thank you so much for joining me at the Tuscan table. I hope you'll also join me on Facebook at Stress Free Cooking with Barbara Seelig Brown. And see you again soon.